Britain's ex-UFC middleweight champion Michael Bisping has found himself in hot water recently following his debut in the booth calling the fights at UFC 271. Some fans claim he showed bias towards champion Israel Adesanya after what many called a very even fight, but Bisping says he was just calling it how he saw it. Today, we're discussing Michael Bisping's response, plus his comments regarding the controversial situation Joe Rogan has found himself in recently. First up, how did the fight play out? Saturday's long-awaited middleweight title fight between Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker delivered an exciting back-and-forth battle, which was great for the neutral fan to watch. Adesanya came out strong and matched Whittaker's pace, catching the Kiwi towards the end of the round and briefly knocking him down. Whittaker, who was knocked out by Adesanya in their first fight back in 2019, came with a more mature game plan this time and wasn't just trying to knock Adesanya out, instead mixing in the threat of takedowns after what Jan Blachowicz did to Adesanya in his light heavyweight debut. After an opening round which probably belonged to Adesanya, Whittaker came out with a big second round, pushing the pace and starting to get in Adesanya's face with a jab a lot better. The fight continued in this vein, and although fans and commentators probably gave the champ 3 and 4, Whittaker almost certainly won the 5th after his corner had warned him he was probably down on the scorecards, which was great advice. Too often we see a corner lie to their fighters, telling them they're doing a great job when they're clearly losing. This time Whittaker had to go for it and did, coming out swinging, and it almost worked too. Whittaker and his team can count themselves a little unlucky to lose a decision, one which was probably just correct on the balance of things, as judges will always side with the champ in tight fights. So what did Bisping do to incur the wrath of MMA fans? Bisping, who usually appears in the studio, was replacing Joe Rogan after the latter was conspicuous in his absence, following criticism of historic comments made on his podcast. Some fans claim Bisping, who shocked the world when he won the middleweight title after knocking out Luke Rockhold back in 2016, was showing bias towards Adesanya, with some even claiming the Englishman was discounting all the good work Whittaker had done. When responding to the comments, Bisping said, "Saturday night after the commentary, there was a slew of abuse, shall we say, but I didn't take it to heart. I wasn't going to go and kill myself or jump off a bridge as many people were telling me to do." Bisping went on to concede that he probably could have worded his comments differently, but that he hasn't yet had the chance to watch it back, telling fans it was more important to him to catch up with his family than to watch the event back, which is fair enough. Bisping's no stranger to online hate, with fans regularly calling him out for some perceived slight against one of their favorite fighters or another, but the former champ can rest well in his bed at night, safe in the knowledge that not one person who trolls him would dare say it to his face. The Manchester native added that he was standing by what he said, and doubled down on his stance that Whittaker was just behind Adesanya in a close fight. What else was said then? Stay tuned to find out. When going back over what he had said in commentary, Bisping said that, in the future, he doesn't want to come to the party just to lose, he has to start throwing the right hand more. He also said that the champ was doing enough to win, and the judges agreed with him. The result last Saturday probably puts an end to any hopes Whittaker might have had of getting a rematch, as he now has been beaten twice by Adesanya. His best chance of another shot at the belt he used to call his own will probably now be to go away and put together another 3 or 4 fight win streak, which we all know he is capable of. Bisping acknowledged that Robert thought he won the fight, but then stated that that's the natural reaction for most fighters at the end of a cage fight. When again defending his point of view, Bisping said, "Of course there was talk about the takedowns, but in the new unified rules of mixed martial arts, in a very close fight, a takedown, unless you use it to pass guard, advance position, do damage, or look for submissions, that it's just classified as a change of position. It doesn't affect the scorecard." Bisping has been in these situations before and has always come out the other side. He clearly knows what he's talking about, as he was the king of the very same division for a spell, so maybe fans should address their own points of view before calling out Bisping for his. This is his profession after all. And what did he have to say about Rogan? Stay with us. UFC fans, a lot of whom double as fans of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, would have been dismayed to learn that Rogan was not allowed to appear on the broadcast on Saturday, with the company citing a scheduling conflict, which anyone with half a brain cell knows is absolute nonsense. ESPN has obviously bowed to the cancel mob and told Rogan he had to sit this one out after the recent criticism of his podcast. Bisping offered an excuse for the hate he was receiving, suggesting it could have been from people who were fans of Rogan who didn't like him in the role, which obviously isn't his fault. Bisping said he was proud to fill in for broadcasting legend Rogan, who is surely the best around at what he does. Bisping had the following to say about Rogan. "Listen, it's kinda crazy what Joe Rogan's going through, but he had a lot of support Saturday night. There were chants of Joe Rogan throughout the octagon. Listen, I don't want to step in and make my pay-per-view debut because someone else is going through some controversy. It's not the ideal scenario, but it was an honor to fill in for Joe Rogan, to be the guy that the UFC called, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity." Bisping also said that he has seen Rogan face the same criticisms after some of his calls in the UFC, so we can probably just chalk this one up to not being able to please everybody. So what about these comments about Rogan being the godfather of MMA MMA commentary. Rogan, who has been a part of the UFC's broadcasting team since 1997, has come in for some strong criticism recently after the woke crowd went back through old episodes of his podcast and found examples of him using the N-word. In these examples, Rogan was generally retelling a story in which someone had used the word, not using the word himself to attack a black person. While there was no excuse for anyone to ever use the word, especially a white person, some of the reaction is bordered on absurdity. And Bisping definitely had his back. While still talking about his own criticisms after the Adesanya vs. Whitaker 2 fight, he said that he wants to learn and that he doesn't understand why people are talking crap about Rogan. And we don't either. Bisping went on to say, "I'm like, what are you talking about? Number one, he is the godfather of the UFC or MMA commentary. He really is. He's the guy that almost essentially started the job, if you will. He's been doing it forever. The big fights don't feel like the big fights without Joe Rogan. You know you're on a pay-per-view. You know it's a special night when Joe's on the microphone." The middleweight legend, who is also a part of the UFC Hall of Fame, said Rogan knows exactly what he's talking about and that he has a way with words, which is why he's got the biggest podcast in the world. More news on Rogan's Spotify deal now, so stick around. Rogan's deal with Spotify has been under the microscope recently, with the extreme left looking for more ways in which they can hang the MMA commentator out to dry. The company are now at the center of a debate which sees the extreme left wanting to cancel the podcast and Rogan, and anyone who is not extreme left and is a fan of free speech wanting the exact opposite. Rogan signed a massive deal with the #1 music streaming service in the world, which was worth a reported $100 million at the time. But it has come to light recently that the deal is more likely to have been worth $200 million. The deal meant that the Joe Rogan Experience, which was already the biggest podcast in the world, was now exclusive to Spotify. Rogan's famous for having unscripted conversations and taking the conversation wherever it goes organically, which only angers the extremists even more as they can't control the narrative. As always, thanks for tuning in today, and remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Bye, guys!